Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Think about the last time your partner did something that made your blood boil. Maybe they interrupted you mid-sentence. Maybe they left dishes in the sink again. Maybe it was their tone, or the way they sighed, or how they looked at you when you said the wrong thing. And in that moment, your chest tightened, your jaw clenched. You felt that familiar heat rising in your throat. Now here's the question nobody talks about. What if your partner didn't actually make you feel that way? What if no person, not even the one you sleep next to every night, has the power to reach inside your nervous system and pull a reaction out of you, unless you hand them that power? That's a hard idea to sit with, I know, because in the moment it feels so obvious. They did something, you reacted. Cause and effect, open and shut. But 2,000 years ago, a man who had every reason to be furious, a man who was enslaved, beaten, and physically disabled, sat down and wrote something that modern psychology is only now beginning to validate. His name was Epictetus, and what he wrote was this: men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. That one sentence, if you actually understand it, not just intellectually but in your gut, has the power to save your marriage. Not by changing your spouse, not by fixing what they do wrong, but by doing something far more difficult: changing the story your mind tells you in the half second between what they do and what you feel. That half second is where marriages are won or lost. Today, we are going to go deep into one of Stoicism's most powerful and most misunderstood practices. A practice the Stoics called prosoche, or self-attention.
And here's the part that should shake you. Gottman found that when couples are in this flooded state, their heart rates are so elevated that they are physiologically incapable of taking in new information. You could say the most loving, rational thing in the world to someone who is flooded, and their brain literally cannot process it as such. Now here's what Epictetus understood. Without brain scans, without longitudinal studies, without any of our modern tools, that is staggering in its accuracy. The trigger is never the thing itself. Let that land. Your spouse is not what triggers you. The unwashed dishes are not what trigger you. The sigh, the tone, the eye roll, none of it is the actual trigger. The trigger is your interpretation of what that thing means. If your partner is running late and you interpret that as, they don't respect my time, you feel anger. But if someone whose partner works in emergency medicine gets the same late arrival and they interpret it as, they're probably helping someone, they feel pride. Same behavior, completely different emotional response, because the emotion follows the story, not the event. The Stoics had a word for this story, this mental label we paste over events: fantasia. A presentation to the mind, an impression. And the core Stoic practice, the foundation of everything, was learning not to accept every fantasia automatically. Epictetus wrote, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." This is not passivity. This is not giving up. This is refusing to let your automatic interpretation run unchecked, because your automatic interpretation was built long before you ever met your spouse. Part 2. The wounds you bring to the marriage. This brings us to what might be the most important thing we discussed today. Every person who walks into a marriage carries a backpack of old pain. Attachment theorists call this our working model of relationships, the subconscious blueprint we developed in childhood, based on how the most important people in our early lives treated us. If you grew up with a parent who is emotionally unavailable, you may have learned that people who love you will eventually leave you, or ignore you, or not see you. So when your spouse gets absorbed in their phone during dinner, your nervous system doesn't just see a person scrolling. It sees confirmation of the oldest fear in your body: I don't matter. If you grew up in a home where conflict meant something was seriously wrong, where arguments were explosive or frightening, then when your spouse raises their voice even slightly, your brain doesn't register normal marital disagreement. It registers danger. If you grew up having to be perfect to receive love, if approval was conditional, then when your partner criticizes how you loaded the dishwasher, you don't just hear feedback about dishes. You hear, "You're not enough." None of this is your partner's fault. And none of it is your fault either. It is simply the architecture of your nervous system, built by experiences that happened before you had any say in the matter. But, and this is the Stoic point, just because it happened to you does not mean it must continue to happen through you. Marcus Aurelius, who was Roman emperor and perhaps the most powerful man on earth during his reign, wrote something in his private journal, the book we now call Meditations, that reveals the depth of this self-awareness. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was not writing that for publication. He was writing it to remind himself, because even he, with all his power and all his Stoic training, struggled to maintain sovereignty over his inner life. This is why the Stoic practice we're exploring today is not a one-time insight. It is a daily discipline. It has to be, because the wounds that make us reactive to our partners are deep. They will not be overwritten by a single realization.
Part 3. Prosoche, the Stoic practice of self-attention. So what exactly is prosoche, and how do you actually do it? The word comes from the Greek, meaning attention to the self. But this is not the navel-gazing self-obsession of modern culture. It is the opposite, a sharp, disciplined outward awareness of how your inner world, your impressions, your judgments, your automatic stories, is driving your behavior in real time. The Stoics understood that most human suffering is caused by unawareness. We don't notice the moment between the trigger and the reaction. We experience the reaction and we assume it was inevitable, as if we had no other choice. Prosoche is the practice of closing that gap, of inserting consciousness into the space between stimulus and response. The Stoic philosopher Pierre Hadot, who dedicated his life to studying ancient philosophy as a way of life rather than an academic exercise, described prosoche as the fundamental Stoic spiritual exercise. He wrote that it was a continuous attention to the present moment, a vigilance over the quality of one's impressions. Here is how to practice it in a marriage, specifically. Step 1. Learn your personal trigger profile. Most people have 3 to 5 core triggers in their marriage, not 100, 3 to 5 situations that reliably activate their nervous system. Maybe it's when they feel dismissed. Maybe it's when plans change without warning. Maybe it's when they feel criticized in public. Your first task is to identify yours with precision. Not, I get upset when my partner doesn't listen. That's too vague. Be specific. Is it that you feel dismissed? Is it that you feel invisible? Is it that you feel like your intelligence is being questioned? The more precisely you name the wound underneath the trigger, the more power you have over it. You cannot work with a fog. You can only work with something you can see clearly. Step 2. Learn the physiological signal that tells you you're triggered. Before the thought comes the body. Long before you say something you regret, your body sends signals. Your jaw tightens, your stomach drops, your breathing gets shallow, your shoulders rise toward your ears. The Stoics, remarkably, were aware of this. Seneca wrote of what he called propathei, pre-emotions, involuntary physical responses that precede full emotional reactions. He described them as movements that neither passion nor reason commands, but which simply happen in the flesh. Modern psychology calls this the felt sense, and recognizing it, learning to notice when your body shifts from regulated to activated, is the single most powerful intervention available to you in a triggering moment. Because the moment you notice the body signal, you have exited the autopilot, you have become a witness to your own process, and a witness has options that a reactor does not. Step 3. Name the impression without accepting it as truth. This is the Stoic core move. When the impression arises, when the story, they don't respect me, or they never listen, or here we go again, pops into your mind, you don't fight it, you don't suppress it, you name it. You say internally, my mind is offering me the interpretation that I am being disrespected. Notice the framing. You're not saying, I am being disrespected. You're saying, my mind is offering me this interpretation. You're holding the thought at arm's length. You're examining it rather than becoming it. Epictetus called this epoche, the suspension of judgment. You pause before assigning meaning. You refuse to let the automatic interpretation become the only possible interpretation. And in that pause, in that half second of suspended judgment, your prefrontal cortex comes back online. You become capable of choosing your response rather than simply executing your reaction. Part 4. The dichotomy of control in marriage. Perhaps the most famous Stoic framework, and the one most relevant to marriage, is what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control. He opens the Enchiridion, his manual for living, with these words. Some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in one word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. Applied to marriage, this distinction is devastating in its clarity. Not in your control, what your partner says, what your partner does, how your partner feels, how your partner changes or doesn't change, what your partner prioritizes, what they remember, what they forget. In your control, how you interpret what they do, what meaning you assign to it, how you respond, what you communicate, what you choose to let go of, what you choose to address, and how.
This is where many couples go wrong. They spend enormous energy, sometimes decades, trying to control what is fundamentally not in their control. They try to change their partner through criticism, nagging, withdrawal, punishment. And when it doesn't work, they conclude that the relationship is hopeless. But they were playing the wrong game all along. The Stoic insight is not that your partner's behavior doesn't matter. It's that your primary arena of influence, the only arena over which you have genuine sovereignty, is your own inner life. And here's the paradox, backed by relationship research. When you stop trying to control your partner and start governing your own reactions with discipline and care, you often create the conditions in which your partner naturally becomes more open, more collaborative, more willing to change. Gottman's research found that in successful long-term relationships, partners influence each other through what he called accepting influence, being open to each other's bids, perspectives, and needs. But this openness is extraordinarily difficult to achieve in a climate of criticism, contempt, and reactivity. When you regulate yourself, when you respond rather than react, you lower the emotional temperature. You signal safety, and safety is what allows genuine change to happen between two people.
Part 5. Amor fati. Loving what is without losing yourself. There's a Stoic concept that is often misunderstood in the context of relationships, and I want to address it directly because if you misapply it, it becomes harmful rather than healing. Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics taught the principle of amor fati, a love of fate, an acceptance, even an embrace of what is, rather than a constant resentment of what isn't. In marriage, this can be misread as accept everything, never ask for anything, swallow your needs. That is not what the Stoics meant, and practicing it that way will not save your marriage, it will suffocate it. What amor fati means, properly understood, is this. Stop spending your emotional energy raging against the unchangeable. Stop rehearsing grievances. Stop nursing the bitterness that comes from wishing your partner were fundamentally different than who they are. Because that bitterness is not hurting your partner. It is corroding you. You can want things to change. You can communicate your needs clearly and firmly. You can hold boundaries with love and with dignity. All of this is fully Stoic because all of it is within your control. What is not Stoic and what is not useful is the internal posture of chronic resistance, the story that says, I should not have to deal with this, this should not be happening. Why do I always have to be the one who... That story is a prison, and you built it, and you are the only one who can unlock the door. Seneca put it simply, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The daily irritations of marriage, the personality differences, the communication gaps, the mismatched needs are manageable in reality. It is our imagination that multiplies them, that turns a quirk into a character flaw, that turns a bad week into evidence that the marriage is fundamentally broken. Prosoche, self-attention, is the practice of catching that multiplication in the act, of saying, what actually happened and what story am I telling about it?
Part 6. The Evening Examination, a Stoic practice for couples. Marcus Aurelius practiced daily self-examination. Seneca wrote entire essays on the subject. Epictetus taught it to his students as a non-negotiable end-of-day ritual. The Stoics called it the vespertine examination, from vesper, the evening hour. And adapting it to marriage is one of the most practical, transformative things a couple can do. Here is a version you can begin tonight. At the end of each day, alone, in a journal, or together with your partner, ask yourself 3 questions. The first, where did I lose my center today? Not where did my partner fail me, where did I lose myself? Where did I react automatically when I could have chosen deliberately? Where did I allow an impression to become my truth without examining it? This is not self-flagellation. The Stoics were clear. You examine your failures not to punish yourself, but to learn, to recalibrate, and to show up better tomorrow. Seneca wrote that his nightly review always ended with the words, do better tomorrow. The second question, what did I add to this relationship today? Not what did you need that you didn't get, what did you give? What did you contribute to the emotional climate of your home? Did you bring curiosity or criticism? Warmth or withdrawal? Presence or distraction? The Stoics taught that virtue is active.
It is not a state you inhabit, it is something you practice, moment by moment. In a marriage, this means asking yourself whether you were the partner